Hello, welcome to Leadership Dialogue. We are focusing tonight on the most significant legal and political event in recent memory, the conviction and life sentencing of the leader of the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, on terrorism charges. Now, the immediate fallout and the legal implications of this verdict are immense. To help us dissect the complex legal layers, we are joined by a distinguished legal expert, Barrister Osigwe Ahmed Momoh. Barrister Momoh, thank you for making our time to be on the show.
Thank you for having me here.
Now, let's dive into it, as it were. The Federal High Court convicted Kanu on count one and ultimately sentenced him to life imprisonment on several counts. Now, from a purely legal standpoint, what is the weight of this ruling? Did the prosecution lead by the federal government satisfy the burden of proof required for a terrorism conviction of this instance?
Well, the court said yes, and the court leaned heavily on the fact that the defendant, the accused person here, had waived his right to a defense. So practically, there wasn't any defense. And so the court looked at it and said, the fact that you don't have a defense does not automatically mean that you're guilty, or the court has to rule that you're guilty. All the court just said is that the prosecutors have established their case and definitely proved it beyond the very difficult threshold, which is not just to prove your matter or substance, just laid out there. You must prove it beyond
reasonable doubt.
Reasonable doubt. That is to say, if there is one reasonable doubt, you have not proved it. But if there's any reasonable doubt, you have not proved that. You have not crossed that threshold. It has to be beyond, reasonable doubt. So yeah.
But let's look at will I call it supposed technicality in terms of the accused, suggesting that one, he doesn't have any case to answer because he doesn't recognize the charges that he's being charged with, and asking the court to prove the law that backs the accusations that have been put against him. Didn't that change the dynamics of the entire proceeding?
I think it did, and quite frankly, I kind of agree with the defendant here to a limited, extent. Kind of agree with him. The defendant, not on the merits of his argument. No, I'm agreeing with him as to the procedure. He came to say, hey, I think that there is a reason why this court should consider jurisdiction. And it's a very germane argument he was putting forward. And so the court needed to hear that matter first and determine it. But the court opted rather to postpone that hearing until judgment. But the defendant here is saying, hey, why should we go to judgment? I don't recognize this issue in the very first instance. I don't think that I should be tried. So determine whether or not I should be tried on this preliminary argument before dragging me to trial. But the court says, no, I'm going to drag you to trial and deal with it. I understand the swiftness of what the court is considering, but it's, justice must not just be done.
It must be seen to be done. It
must be seen. As a matter of fact, in this case, particularly, justice perceived was probably more important. There are a lot of people who feel marginalized. There are a lot of people who have lost confidence in the judiciary. And so the courts needed to be, I understand that it's a court of justice. It's cut away from every, sentiment and emotion. But this is Nigeria. We understand the times we are living in. It's a troubled reality in Nigeria right now. Nigeria right now is not the happiest it's been. Thankfully, we are now having more content, which many of us have been praying for. We wanted to get content of this criminality is happening all over, this banditry, and somehow it's as if the press ignored it. But for some reason,
It has decided to come to the front burner by itself.
Well, not by itself. It was not. It was by Trump's tweet or truth or whatever. Social media
Trump poked the tiger.
Yeah. So it did that, and now Nigerians are talking and dealing and seeing the pain. And so this is a very complex time and troubled time in Nigeria. And so this matter is here now. We are all interested in Nigeria, what's happening now. We are watching this matter live, and many people felt, no, well, this man may be treated badly. So I'm saying that the court, particularly the young man and his consultant lawyers, whatever acronym they go by, decided to file a matter in the Court of Appeal.
Yes.
To question whether this issue that was raised and the court seemingly dismissed or postponed, see whether it's not one that ought to be attended to instantly. And so the moment they filed it, the court needed not to rush
to judgment.
To judgment. There was nothing to gain from that. I believe firmly that the entirety or the spirit behind saying that a criminal trial should be very fast is to assist the defendant, not to punish him. So the day-to-day hearing, as imagined or prescribed by ACJA, the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, is to protect a defendant from being dragged 20 years from going to court day in, day out, on month in, month out. There are some cases that some prosecutors don't have any case, they can drag you and frustrate you. So the rush there is to protect the defendant. In this instance, it's the defendant that is asking for time. The court ought to have given him that time, because fair hearing is not just coming to court, it's creating the facility of fair hearing. I wouldn't deem this to be fairly done, because this man was already in the Court of Appeal questioning a matter that is the legitimate question. Why should I go through a trial when there are preliminary questions that you haven't answered yet? So the optics about this is bad. Now, again, I must emphasize, I am not talking or delving into the merits or the meat of the matter. We are looking at the container, everything around it.
From the surface.
Yeah, and the winner here cannot be justice. Even though the federal government has a duty to ensure justice for every Nigerian but this seemed to be that the loser here seemed to be the judiciary. People have lost hope. Showore is out there calling this a theater, saying that the script was written way ahead of time, and the judge was finding it hard to even rehash his own words, as it were. And I don't like any attack at the judiciary, to be honest, because we must protect the sanctity of the judiciary. And it was almost, it was also said that the judge was angry because of the nature of the defendant. Nnamdi Kanu's antics were out for everybody to see, mostly unpalatable. I think it was badly advised in that regard. He had a lot of people, look at him and they say ignorant or arrogant, which of them, is he arrogant and ignorant, or is he, what I mean? So he appeared to be a little bit heady, harsh. Imagine him telling a lawyer a while ago. The court also rehashed that. The justice said that in the judgment. Keep quiet, don't talk when I'm talking. You're telling a lawyer in court. How dare you? How dare you? Where did you get that from? Why you fool? You don't do that. You don't say that. You ought to have been cautioned strictly. You don't say that. Telling your lawyer in public, a lawyer for that matter, don't talk when I'm talking. Really? That's an insult. Do you get? So many of these seem like the man was badly, prepared. You prep a defendant in court. Forget about the antics of, the matter itself. Sometimes there are antics, how you dress, how you comport, these things matter. Builds your case. The judge is looking at you, say, you appear to be a troubled, violent person. I feel like if you're I see how you're sensationalizing this thing. If you're in the public, you can sensationalize and cause more death with your, with your rhetorics and your rage was visible for everybody to see. So I don't think he did himself much good in that regard. But that's on the one side, so you have to balance it. If they have gone to trial fully, I think fully, if they have entered defense in this matter, I think it may have been really, really difficult for the prosecutors Just my opinion. I thought he would have gotten most likely a fair judgment. There were many questions he would have asked,
Acts.
but he didn't. He kind of waived that, and somehow, obviously, I feel I can say this with full confidence. The Court of Appeal would probably ask for send the matter back a retrial or something.
Okay, now speaking of the law, a major point of contention raised by the defense and various groups is the alleged use of repealed law. Can you clarify the legal stand on the prosecution using charges potentially framed under the Terrorism Prevention Act 2013 when the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act 2022 is now in effect?
Yeah. So, and this is very interesting. I like this question. It's a good question of law. Now, a law cannot be retroactive. You cannot make a law in 2025, for example, prohibition on eba eating. Nobody should eat eba in Nigeria again in 2025. And because I ate eba in 2024, you're right, you will now come and say you are charged for eating. No, I did not eat it when you made it. I ate it before. Do you get? A good example will also be the LGBT law in Nigeria.
Yeah.
I think that was passed in 2015 thereabout. And all that. But even though that was, you will have to look for a law at that time. If somebody committed the offense prior to the law, you look for the law applicable at that time, as it were, which of course the penal code and as that would be. But let me not deviate. Let's stay focused on this issue. The mere fact that the law has been repealed or amended doesn't mean it's dead. In the sense that if the law, you have been charged with that law, as at that time you have been charged, and you're already in court and it's been amended, the authorities to that effect, your charge is very valid. It's only that it cannot come back and hurt you, but the fact that it has been amended, the charge doesn't die. It continues. Because at the time of the offense, what was the applicable law? Were you well charged as at the time? That's all that matters. That's all that matters. And any other argument here will fail. Fall flat and fail. So if you were charged in 2024 for eating eba with an act that says don't eat eba in 2024, that's even if you're in 2027,
where that law no longer exists,
Where it
or
was amended
that
in
law had been
2025.
amended,
Yes.
meaning it has been modified.
It is not dead. It's just that it can't go back. Not necessarily, it can't go back. And also, the way it can't go forward is that you can't necessarily now, maybe in 2025, which would be odious. Now, you can't find somebody who have done something, someone in 20, and I say, because of this law, you did this thing at that time, I'm charging you now afresh. That won't fly, but you have been charged before it was amended. If you were charged, how do I frame it now? Okay, if you were charged in 2025, for example, with a law that has been amended, then there's a crisis. Okay, but you were charged in, my understanding was in 2015, right?
Yeah.
Because at that time, that law was still
in
extant.
effect.
The next law at that time. And so it just dragged out here. And if their argument is on the amendment of that law, as it were, how does it fly? I think that, I will really, this is one of the reasons why the court ought necessarily to have given judgment on this. We need to expand the frontiers on this, because if you're amending the charge, it comes, say, well, it's amended now, so it doesn't exist anymore. How do you balance it out? I still think that the law will say, hey, this is for an offense at that time. The law at that time is applicable for the offense at that time. It just can't go back. But this is not it going back. We are not saying you committed this offense in 2022. We are saying you committed this offense in 2013. And the law in 2013 is as it was at that time. So it's repealed, but that's why there are archives. It's repealed, but it's working, is in effect for that offense as at that time. It just can't go back. But again, we have missed it. And I think the Court of Appeal will look into that matter strongly. Yeah, it will look into the matter strongly, and I think they are very interesting. But that still has the position And there's no way it will change. But you won't say because a law has been amended, automatically the charge dies. That won't fly.
Now, the court explicitly linked Kanu's political broadcasts, his words, to violence on the ground. Does this ruling not set a powerful, perhaps dangerous precedent that criminalizes political agitation and free speech, even if the speech is aggressive?
No, not at all. There's a difference. Speech, and I had somebody saying, how do you criminalize speech? Who says that? Why it's incitement? Of course you criminalize speech, depending on the nature of the speech. You get incitement there. You are inciting people to do an offense. You can't say, hey, no. Do you understand? There's a law in the penal code which is offending the chastity of a woman. If, for example, you see a married woman and you say, hey, this woman, quote unquote, ashawo, as it were. The woman can go to court under the penal code and say, hey, this man, as you know, is there to, I can't quite remember how the law is framed, but it's an affront to my person with what he said. And don't also forget there's criminal defamation. These are words in our laws, in our body of laws. So words have always been criminalized. It's the nature of how it works. You get, so what exactly are you criminalizing? If Nnamdi says, I want to leave Nigeria, that's a question that I think is legitimate. He has a right. But if he says, go and bomb police station, that's not you saying, I want to leave Nigeria. That's not the same
thing. That is you inciting mayhem.
That is you inciting. You don't go there. You can't go to, tell people, go and do this, go and, no, how do we run a country like that? You get, and it's not just Nigeria. We even have better laws than many of these Western countries people keep flouting around. Find out how many people are in prison in the United Kingdom, in Germany, all over, for Facebook posts. Oh, some of them frivolous. Do you get, exactly. I'm saying, I'm not, how do I put it up? I do not think that we should criminalize speech, but we have it. And Lagos State have done a good thing to, decriminalize defamation, and many other states are following suit. And I think that's how it should go. So some of this speech should be, it's mere words. But when you tell somebody to go and kill, if a cleric, for example, and we have had clerics in this country, we had a story of a former minister, government appointee, who told people to go commit a religious crime. We've had that story. Sometimes when you hear things like, be like, really? Where are the facts? Because we need the media to be out. You won't say if that incident is true, you won't say that it just said it just is an advice, it's a mere word. So no, some speech must be criminalized. Some ought to be criminalized. Not all, clearly. Mere agitation for secession, I think that's a fundamental right. That's a God-given right. You can't fight him for that. But advising people, admonishing people, encouraging people, inciting people to commit crime has to be an offense.
Now, another procedural issue raised by the defense was Kanu's reported refusal to enter a plea and the lack of proper defense. How does this affect the legality and the fairness perception? You talked about the optics earlier of this trial, because, and you also said from your standpoint that that's one of the reasons why the trial judge shouldn't have rushed the judgment. But as it is now, looking at the bigger picture, because there are all kinds of debates in the polity, and for a case of this nature that also has both its political and tribal undertone, how do we navigate these troubled waters, as it were?
Yeah, the first question is quite easy to answer, because if he doesn't plead, it means he has pleaded not guilty. That's it. Besides, it's a criminal case, so he has to. The life matter. It had a death penalty, so automatically you are not guilty. Death matter, so you can't come and say no, prove it. It has to be proved. It's a serious matter. A life is being questioned here. So yeah, definitely non guilty is the plea. And that would fly. But the optics of the whole thing, ethnic, I feel like this entire matter was a political matter and not a legal matter. This is a matter that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu missed. It's a true pass that he missed. I saw when the social media post of Mr. Kubana Chibike,
Yeah,
yeah,
Cubana chief priest.
yeah, chief priest of an alcoholic shrine. He said that the man ought to have the president should release this man and all that. And I think that somehow you can look into that, I say, well, he's been there, he's been in prison, at least directly. Nobody's saying he killed anybody with his hands. He may have incited, but even that you have to prove with facts to say his words XYZ did led to the death. You are not guesstimating, you're not, conjuncting. That's why it's beyond reasonable doubt. I mentioned earlier that if this matter had gone into trial, I think, if they have entered defense, is what I mean to say, I think that the defendant would have most likely walked out. The threshold is pretty high for the government to satisfy, to prove beyond. I think it's pretty high. They would have quickly poked holes inside there, and that's what they need to do. Show who exactly did he kill? When exactly? What did he say that led to what death at what time? Do you understand? Show me the timeline. How do you establish it? You need to establish it. You're not just going to come to court and say, yeah, I've been saying this so people he may have or he must have. That's not how you establish a criminal matter. You get. So you have to establish it with specificity. It's a criminal matter. It's beyond reasonable doubt. I'm not here to conjure you. Will show me how you arrived at this. It's a high threshold for a reason, and doesn't mean it's an unrealistic threshold. Doesn't mean it's how you have to make all the evidence. Sometimes just one evidence is more than enough to say, hey, this is it. But you must arrive at this threshold of proof beyond reasonable doubt, which I think the prosecutors would have struggled, in my very humble position, to arrive at that. So the point I'm making in this is that the people are looking, they're seeing a convicted leader of a terrorist, someone who came to say, yes, I am a terrorist. Yes, I have actually killed and facilitated in killing Nigerians, and he got 20 years.
Exactly.
You marry both of them. It's sound, and don't just understand that the average Nigerian doesn't understand. He went to this court, he went to that. They ought to be a standard, and that's how it should be. The law should have it. It's one court, as it were. The High Court, Federal High Court, so it shouldn't be as if it's whimsically which I understand is allocutus. There are several factors, but that judgment ought, in my opinion, also, because it can be guiding the honorable judge, but I feel like that ought to have been somewhere in his mind, someone who is a professed convict, convict killer, that I did this, I'm a terrorist, I've terrorized, and people have died directly. Nobody's saying Nnamdi Kanu directly killed anyone. Nobody's saying he particularly joined a gang or he was with guns and all that. That conjunction is difficult. There's not there. There's nothing there. He has just said his Radio Biafra may have caused, and and then we'll now be looking at what kind of punishment for life, and 20 years from the known renowned terrorist. 20 years. Don't forget that this is a time where people are out there clamoring. There's a sheikh who is clamoring for the rehabilitation. So it doesn't appear fair. And so the president ought to have come in at this stage to look at this matter and say, okay, too much is happening in the Southeast. Let's, too much is happening in Nigeria, generally speaking. Let's look at the political solution, which I think it was a true pass that he missed. He had a chance to broker peace, create an enabling environment in the Southeast. Of course, a lot of Easterners are finding it hard to travel. This year, the economy is going to be very difficult for people in the Southeast because many of them understand that there's a boom in the Southeast during the embargo period. People come, they sell and all, and a lot of people will be hesitant to go by road and all that. And so, so it's something that there ought to have been a political solution. I think that would have been a better route.
Well, the Deputy Speaker of the House of Reps, in the person of Right Honorable Benjamin Kanu, has said that there is still political solution in the on the line, so that people of the Southeast shouldn't completely lose hope. Anyway, finally, the court showed mercy by sentencing him to life imprisonment instead of the death penalty. And it ordered his detention in a more secured facility than the Kuje Correctional Center. Now, are these final directives a nod to judicial fairness or an acknowledgement of the political nature of the case?
Well, I think more of the judicial political nature of the case. You know, the death penalty on this would have, for want of a better word, would have been ridiculous. Life imprisonment, people are screaming that's ridiculous right now. So the death penalty may have been more, But I think that most people feel if you run a poll now and ask, is it going from a legal cycle, not the Nigerian general, is it going to get an appeal? Is the court going to agree with him on appeal? And I think most people think yes, most the court will most likely overturn this. I think that's the sentiment. Most likely overturn this. And I feel like that's a bright light. So we expect that the court will likely overturn this. The High Court of Appeal, I mean to say, yeah, that's what we expect.
Well, Barrister Momoh, your analysis has been invaluable. And as we wrap up, what must the government do now to ensure that this legal victory does not become a political mistake that deepens the alienation of the Southeast, particularly?
Yeah, I think the government has to do a lot. This particular president has to do a lot. The Southeast have been one zone probably that have not had a president or vice president since 1999. That's something. They've not had a president or vice since 1999, since we had this space of election. The last time, a lot of people felt that the candidate of the Labour Party, which happened to be from the Southeast, was robbed in many areas. And so, there's a dissatisfaction. The president has to, being a father, you have to help, you have to show love, you have to reach out to. So I think that he has to see himself now as the father of this country. If this is a price for the unity of this country, it's a very small price to be paid. Very small price to be paid. If we had a president who thought it was okay to rehabilitate Boko Haram and other
and reintegrate them into the military and civil society.
Yes. Which was outrageous. I don't know how this country allowed that idiocy to fly, in my opinion. Yeah, but if we had that, this is a low-hanging fruit. And don't forget, the president also gave prerogative of mercy, clemency to a lot of people, including dreaded kidnapper, Mr. Kelvin. We shouldn't forget that's a criminal with criminal history, and they say he has political advantage. I don't care. He was convicted as a criminal, and yet Mr. President gave him clemency. I mean, Mr. Nnamdi Kanu is a small price, but I also feel like the nature and the personality of Kanu is adding to this. He's very haughty. He appears very, heady, and I don't necessarily think that it will just go down quiet. I think Mr. Kanu can agitate for a free Nigeria without violence. That's all. That's not so much for him on his own. You can become, shockingly, the most successful human rights and secessionists and leaders worldwide have been calm people. Have you seen Gandhi? Have you seen Mandela? Did you see even Martin Luther as he was calm? Their demeanor matters. So when you're advocating for something of this nature, you need to have some kind of a noble regalia that you wear. So you speak, not necessarily go kill, So his nature, his very nature is just depicting rage, anger. So it's difficult to deal in that. I'm just balancing it one way or another. So
well, some will say that for a man who's been incarcerated for the period of time, Nnamdi Kanu has been denied all kinds of stuff. It's enough to make a man, shift the paradigm in terms of his mindset. Anyway, powerful conclusion, and legal enforcement must be matched by political engagement. Barrister Osigwe, Ahmed, Momoh, thank you so much for sharing your legal insights in this matter, especially on this edition of Leadership Dialogue.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Right. Now, remember, click that button, follow, like, and share, and of course, be part of the conversation. What do you think? Nnamdi Kanu, maybe we'll do that poll just to get your own thoughts on the matter. I am John Cameo. Thanks for being part of this edition of Leadership Dialogue. Bye for now.